And here we are. We're together again, Ford. Together again, talking about reverse redacting. We're not just talking, we're reverse redacting. And we are reverse redacting League of Legends today. And maybe more than just League. We're going to be talking, I'm sure, about gaming and how it affects our society, right?
Yeah.
But League is something that both you and I enjoy playing. You like League more, but these are they called MOBA? MOBA
Yeah,
games?
MOBAs. That's right.
Mass. What does it stand for? It's like defensive. This
multiplayer online battle arena.
Battle arena. Yeah. The Defense of the Ancients, Dota, was the very first one.
That's right.
And I got into it back in. Well, I got into. Well, I mean, I guess it goes back to our college days when I was playing StarCraft, and then I played a little Warcraft, and then when Warcraft 3 came out, it was just an amazing game. I never got into World of Warcraft, but Warcraft 3 split off into two major gaming opportunities, or I don't know, phylums. You had the MOBAs, and you had the what's the word for the World of Warcraft one? It's like
MMO.
MMO.
What does that mean? I don't know. Something. I don't know.
Yeah, and so I got more into the so they somebody modified World of Warcraft 3 to be able to play the, it's basically, for those of you who don't know what a MOBA is, it's a online game basically where you're playing kind of like capture the flag, except it's more like destroy the flag.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost like a King of the Hill sort of scenario, but not really. Yeah, you're right. It's almost like a deliver a payload situation to an enemy base and blow it up.
Yeah. But, yeah. It's like 5 versus 5. You got 3 lanes that are going, it's symmetrical map. And you're just trying to destroy the other person's base. It's a lot like what we used to play when I was a kid, when in the snow, with snowballs.
Right.
Yeah. Except if you knock somebody out, you get $300 and you get to buy a bigger snowball.
That's right. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. It incorporates elements of all kinds of role-playing games as they've developed over time. It would be interesting to do some sort of study to see the etymology of all this stuff. I mean, a lot of it does go back to Dungeons and Dragons days. I'm sure Dungeons and Dragons has a lot to do with the whole hit points thing, and then which hit points worked its way into, of course, Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest in the Japanese RPG video game versions, and to a lesser degree like Zelda with the hearts. It utilizes all those things that have come before HP, MP, and mana. They use mana in League of Legends. But you got health, you got mana, and then...
Is that how you're supposed to say it, mana? I thought it was just mana.
They say, I mean, the Riot employees, they say mana, but I say mana. So, and then you have abilities, so you can auto attack, which is just like hitting with your sword or your gun or whatever, your bow and arrow. And then you also have abilities. And so each champion has 4 different abilities in League. And you also have something called a passive that is your special superpower that gives you added stats in a certain area. And some of these get very complicated, and that's what makes the game so replayable. A real evolution in it started off as a mod of Warcraft, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
So the evolution of it over time, they've kept that same mentality where every patch, every update, they're adding something new to change the play style. And so it's always a new game. Like every time you queue up, it's a new game. And that makes it very frustrating at times because you think you've mastered the game. And
that's something particular to League of Legends, because there was a group of my friends where we were playing Dota. We were, the Warcraft 3 mod, and it was so hard to, get everybody together because it was a mod, right? And we just kept saying, man, I hope somebody comes out with a game. Then we saw League of Legends Riot was forming, right? The 2 guys, what were their names?
It's Tryndamere and I can't remember the other guys. I mean, that's their screen names.
Right.
It's Mark Merrill. He's Tryndamere. He's the main. dude.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember I guess it's Rise. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Yeah. Trendemir and Rise. Yeah. But so they were coming up with, but they took forever. I remember like waiting on them. I was even on the, beta testing, friends and family beta testing. But that took forever. And then they had a couple times where you would update and then they would take it off the market for a little while. And I just got so frustrated with it that I went to another one that was called Heroes of New Earth that they just got up and running, and they just were working out the bugs as they were going along. They had a lot of problems. There'd be bugs that would just crop up, but they were just kind of letting you play anyways.
Right.
They weren't taking it off the market, which I appreciated. And Dota 2 didn't come out for years. So
League was already in process by the time Dota 2 came out. Is that correct?
Oh, it was already full running, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't like it either because compared to the Warcraft version, it was very cartoony and two-dimensional.
Right. Yeah. The early version of League of Legends looked bad. So, I mean, when they finally got their graphic rework, that kind of, pushed League over the top. I mean, it was already in the top 5 most of the time on like Twitch streams. But yeah, since then it's only been threatened once, and that was twice, once by Overwatch and another time by PUBG. Now Fortnite's threatening, but I really don't think Fortnite's going to outlast League either. So it's kind of
a different demographic, I think.
I guess so. It is. I think these games just have a shorter shelf life because once, I was talking about it with Satya yesterday, and I was like, the thing about Fortnite and the reason why I never got into these first-person shooters is because the mechanics of the game don't make sense in terms of the universe of the game. So what I mean by even Halo, which I think maybe the pinnacle of first-person shooters. I mean, I guess some people would say Call of Duty would be. And it is a very, maybe the most realistic of them all. But I have never really played Call of Duty like once or twice, I guess. But Halo it was a beautiful game. Halo 2 especially, such a great competitive game. But even in Halo 2, there were these exploits, and if you didn't do the exploits, you really couldn't be great at the game. These things like BXR, these little button presses where you could have one kit, melee kills, and these little triple tap thing. I don't know. And I never would think in terms of that. And whereas in League of Legends, it's much harder to kind of game the system. I mean, there are exploits, there are glitches, there are graphical inconsistencies, there are bugs, but they're usually not game-breaking bugs. And so when I was watching Fortnite the other day, for instance, and it's much better. It's much better game when you see real people play it. People who know how to do it. But at the same time, it's like, I would just never think of doing it this way. The adaptations you have to make in game in a first-person shooter are just so odd that just aren't they're not like self-explanatory, and they don't make sense with the strategy of the game. So for instance, in Fortnite, you're like, oh, you think you're building forts. That's not what people end up doing. They end up building steps everywhere, and they hide behind the steps as they're jumping. So you're building steps up into the air, and it's just like Minecraft. I just find like Minecraft meets PUBG. Like, oh, look at me, I'm building, guys, and this is my shield. And at least in Overwatch, you have a guy with a shield. Like you're not building steps to be your shield. And then they're jumping all over the place. It's just nonstop jumping. Like, you got these guys with rocket launchers jumping like this. And it reminds me, back in our days, it was Unreal Tournament or Quake, and everyone is just flying across the screen nonstop. And you have to marvel at these people's sniping ability, because they'll be going like what seems like 100 miles an hour across the map after they've hit some jump point, and they're zooming in with their sniper rifle and getting a headshot from across the map. That's impressive, but it's just ludicrous. Like, it's just, how can you watch that as a spectator? It's not a very spectatable game. And the thing about League and Dota, they're very spectatable games. And so when Overwatch, everyone's like, oh, Overwatch is number 1 in Korea, League is done. Nope. Overwatch is lucky to get in the top 5 at this point. And I predict the same thing for Fortnite.
So why do you think League is is much more conducive to spectating?
Well, League is kind of like the Apple version of the Dota universe. It's just so form factor functional and small. The Summoner's Rift, this one kid did this great video about why Summoner's Rift is perfect. And it's why I don't want to play anything else in League. Like I just forget it. Let me just play on Summoner's Rift.
Explain what is Summoner's Rift for those who don't know?
It's the main map. So it's the main map with, you've got a red side and a blue side, and they're almost perfectly symmetrical, but not quite. And they have a couple little differences. They have these things called buffs, these jungle camps where you can fight, and they give you added stats. And so the buffs are a little different. The main buffs, you got a dragon on one side and this thing called Baron, which is this really giant purple looking dragon or snakish thing. And so
it's basically a game board, right?
It's like a game board. That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah. And so you got these 3 main lanes leading from one base to the other. And, no 2 games are the same. Like every time you queue up, because it's dependent, it's almost like improvisational. It's like, whose line is it anyway meets. Yeah, in some ways it does remind you of what I guess Dungeons and Dragons would be like,
Absolutely.
Because it really requires user interaction in order to make this sports match. And so it's just so much more variable than watching a football game or a basketball game. It's just so much more variable because sometimes you might not even see the same 2. Like Timo, as far as I know, was in North American competitive play, was only played. Someone said he's only played 1 time. I don't believe that, but I remember the game I saw him with this one champion Timo that I hate with a passion. He's this little Pikachu looking rodent that shoots you with these little blinding darts and leaves you poisoned. And I just want to eat him alive. But he was played by a mid laner high on this one kind of legendary team Cloud9 versus Team Solo Mid, who's a lot of people's favorite, and High destroyed him with those stupid little poison mushrooms. Yeah, he's almost like Toad. Actually, that's kind of what he's like. He's like Toad from Mario. Anyways, so there's times that you won't see some of these matchups like twice, And when your champion, the one that you like to play, and there's over 100 of them, when the champion that you like to play gets brought up on the international stage at Worlds, you're just like, oh man, I get to see my champion like played by a real pro. And so it's like someone had said this about surfing one time, a surfing journalist. He said, the great thing about surfing is you can paddle out your local break and you can run into Kelly Slater, the world champion. Like that can happen. Like you're never going to go to your local basketball court and run into Michael Jordan or LeBron. It's like that's not going to happen. But with League, that can happen. Like
the democratization of what is it? Champion sports
competition. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, if you're good enough, welcome to the club, baby. Like you could be playing against Faker, the best League of Legends player of all time. So,
and the reason it is a sport is because it has rules and limitations that everybody can understand. Not everybody understands, but can understand. It's something that you can enter into that has established rules.
That's right. It's open to the public now. And if you
competitive,
and those rules are complicated too. I mean, every patch you're just like, what does that mean? Someone just made a Reddit post this week about what League of Legends is going to be like in 2020. And it was, or, 5 years or something. And it was this long list of things for what this person's passive does, their special power. And it's like reading the footnotes of some very elaborate bill that's getting ready to be passed in the House. It's like, who even knows? You have to have a lawyer to read this thing to understand. A lawyer and a mathematician and a computer programmer.
Well, I think that's the thing that's very attractive to me. These MOBA games, League of Legends, seems like it's even more than the ones I've played before, like Dota and Heroes of New Earth, because it has a different kind of interactions. You see, what the games I played, there were certain you can memorize which items cancel each other out and stuff like this,
right?
But in this one, it seems like there's more like interaction between the weapons you can get, and then you have to think about your passive. See, we didn't have passives, or some characters had passives, but it was one of their Q or it was
right, okay, they didn't have a right. I got you.
So it is very complicated, and we've talked about how much math goes into
definitely
into playing League of Legends.
Well, and so we would get into this debate when I was playing over in India, and we were streaming weekly, and so I was trying to convince my daughter the importance of math. And so I was talking about, well, the reason the Koreans are beating everyone is just because they're doing the math. Like Faker is just he's intuitively doing the math, and everyone's making fun of, oh, it's the math. Well, I'm like, yes, it is. Like, you can say what you want, but there's no way you'll watch him do certain things, and some of it is intuition, and some of it's just the thousands of hours he's played, but some of it he knows because he knows how much his passive is doing. He knows how much damage he can take. And you'll see them. Sometimes you'll see someone like Faker make a move and you're like, oh, why is he doing it? Oh, the person's dead. Okay. Like you do, before you even realize what's happened, he already knows. It's like watching someone play chess who's really good. They know when they've won like 5 moves ahead of time, right? So you'll see Faker make those kind of moves and you're like, this is a bad idea. Okay, never mind. Yeah, okay.
But see, that's why I'll never be great, is because math bores me so much.
Right.
I mean, that's why I've always loved games, but I enjoy losing more because I'm trying out different things. I'm trying to beat you without the math.
Right. See, and that's why I want to get to the point where I'm thinking in terms, I love, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I want to be able to apply that kind of thing to playing League. But in order to get there, you have to be able to do at least more of the mechanics than I have put the time into getting at this point. And one of the reasons why North America, I mean, there's a big joke about North America and Europe in a EU. We make fun of each other, but the truth is we just both suck so monumentally in comparison to China and Korea. And I really believe the reason for that is because we're not doing the math. Like we think like jocks. I mean, if you see everybody on Twitch that's from North America, it's just too cool for school, man. They're either stoners or they're jocks. And it's just this. But the thing is, jocks have to do the drills. Like a jock playing football, they don't get, they might have the persona, but they're doing their homework. They know the fundamentals of their sport and they do it. And that's who wins.
Well, here's the thing.
Who talk the biggest trash. It's the people who do the best math,
Yeah. Well, I've talked a little bit about this with my wife because she teaches English to young Chinese kids. And it's amazing. Like we've talked a lot about how the Asian culture just pushes their kids to succeed, but particularly succeed in the with what would seem trivial. We, for North America, we look at trivial things like math. We look at math as trivial. So we will put tons of discipline into like macro physical endeavors. But we will not put the discipline into micro mental endeavors.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And so we'll be really disciplined, but math takes a different kind of discipline. It takes a real, like this micro endeavor.
Yeah. Math and, I would say music. And that's another thing because pop music has taken over, which is not as technically proficient. You don't have to be as technically proficient in pop or rock, the main or rap, pop, rock, or rap. All three of them, you just don't have to be as technically proficient. Now, that's not to say that those are easy art forms. On League of Legends, like you'll have an easy champion like Garen, one of the free champions you can play at the beginning. He has an easy learning curve, but mastery is still difficult, and using him in the right way it still takes some time to master. There are other champs like LeBlanc who I was working on this week, and I'm so bad at her. Like I cannot do anything right with that champion. And so I think that we kind of take this approach like with things like violin or I see my kids that are taking violin lessons. The violin's the LeBlanc of musical instruments. It's just so hard. It's not a learning curve, it's a learning wall. And the only way to surmount that obstacle is just to build a tiny step a day. And you have to be relentless with covering that step. And kids don't like failure. And it's like, nope, you have to push to failure here. I mean, we do that when working out, anybody who works out knows you push to failure. Well, you have to push to failure in music and math. And that just means you have to keep going at it. You have to keep doing that one little exercise over and over, come at it from a different angle, but you don't get past go. You do not collect $200 until you can do the exercise. And that doesn't feel good. Again, people just kind of expect things to just be intuitive or something like that. But like you said, I think it is more incremental. We need more of that. How did you put that about the I was
The
really good at
micro, the micro
micro.
endeavors.
The micro endeavors. We need more of that in music and math and science too. I think we need more of those in the applied science. Like just okay, like the robot broke or the experiment broke. Like why did it break? Let's take a step back, and because these are hard facts. When I and this is another thing in NA, just so many people just blame the game. Wow, this is stupid. The meta.
What's NA?
North America. The meta, and when someone says the meta, that means the way to play right now in this current update. The way that the new changes they've made in the last month. So this meta sucks. I'll just forget this game. Oh, right sucks. Blah blah blah. And they just want to blame everything on God, quote unquote. Blame it on reality. Like, oh, life is unfair, and you just hear that life is unfair garbage all the time in North America, rather than what do I need to do to change? How can I be better at this? And you look at so many of the times that these people win, it's really, they win because of things that are out of their control. Like somebody on the other team is in a bad mood. Someone on the other team disconnects. Someone on the other team is playing a champion they've never played before. And people just take credit for their own, they just assume that it's them being good. I mean, just look at me, man. I'm a master. And that just happens all the time in North America. So.
Well, in order to crack the code here for micro endeavors and looking at different cultures, one thing, a hang up for me, a roadblock is I talked earlier about how I don't believe in laziness. To me, if somebody is being lazy, there's a reason for that. They're not able to relate to something. They're not interested in that thing.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no such thing as like this magic in us that happens that makes us turds. It's like when we don't engage in work, we only work for the things we want. We will work very hard. Somebody says, I'll give you $1,000 to dig 5 holes. You'll do it,
Right.
Just because you're not digging,
clear. If the goal is clear, right? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good way.
If the goal is clear and you're engaged with it, if there's self-determination is something that necessitates pleasure on the other end. Not not just pleasure, but I mean, ultimately it's pleasure, but necessitates happiness.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sacrificing for a goal. And I think that's true. There's a lot in our culture where we're so technologically sophisticated and connected. This is one of the reasons I'm still a big fan of Radiohead, and I don't see that ever really changing. Like I feel like they are a melancholy band meditating on the problems of loneliness in a connected world. Right? It's loneliness in a connected world. Why are we so lonely even though we're so connected? Why are we so lonely even though we have everything that we want? Why are we like unhappy and discontent? And I think, that problem, we do need more of these micro processes. I think we need more micro processes to try to, because sometimes digging the ditch, can actually feels good once you get past that first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, we need incentives that actually make sense. And I just think that there's so many incentives that are just kind of up there and out of reach. And it feels like the lottery. I mean, so many of these success stories that we idolize in Hollywood and just the Prince Charming sort of idea, the fairy tale sort of thing, whatever angle you want to talk about it, it almost feels like winning the divine lottery. Right. And it's not a very encouraging thing, because it just feels like, well, I'm not going to get picked even if I work my hardest. So yeah, I think we do need something to kind of incentivize. And you'll see that when you watch people play League, like they have a phrase for this. They call it tilted. And, tilted is, I imagine it came from the pinball playing days. Like if the pinball machine gets tilted, then it starts freaking out and it won't log any more points. Because if you're tilting it, that's cheating, right? You're tilting the machine to get the ball into the correct place, bumper or whatever. So when you get tilted playing a video game, you're done. And you see the look on these guys' faces, and they turn so angry. They start arguing with their chat, people, watching them on Twitch. And it's not a fun place to be. And it happens to everyone. And I feel like we're a lot of us in the modern world, in current day, are tilted.
It's interesting you bring up. I do let's talk a little bit about language and how
Oh, yeah.
language like language has been really formed by these gaming communities. I knew about a lot of these acronyms that people were started using in texting from gaming. Like I was like, oh, that's just a gaming, for the win, FTW, and that came along way before people started using it in Facebook. Of course, now it's passe, but like tilted, that's something that came out of the gaming, like, that put me on tilt, like people are going to start saying that way more nowadays. You'll hear it in news or something, like, but it came from gaming. A lot of these little ways of talking, and they're English words, which is interesting,
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And
I
so that
thought,
is once again, I can't remember the first time I heard it. I think it might have been, what's his name? Fresh off the boat. Eddie Wong. Is it Eddie Wong? He had that show for a while on Vice. I think he may still have it. It's like kind of Anthony Bourdain style, and he travels around. He's a chef, and just has more of a like hip hop sensibility with his stuff. And he even said, he was talking about the soft power of America. He's seeing how even in China there's this influence of American corporate culture or American marketing culture or Hollywood. It's just this soft power that even though people aren't necessarily bowing down and kissing the ring, they're still like, oh man, I'm still going to watch that movie. And I think there is a real soft power to so much that happens in video games, that whole, subcultures are created, memes are born that really influence the rest of the internet landscape, and by extension, the global landscape. And so there are people that, a lot of people that have never heard of that are celebrities on the internet. I mean, I'm a cutie pie, like, if you talk to any person, well, I mean, most people over 30, most parents, they're not going to know who that is.
yeah.
But, this guy is like, he's been a legend for years. And there's a guy, let's see, like, who's on Twitch right now? It's just curious to see whose number one channel is. So, oh, hold on, sorry. Number one, oh well, actually, it's the Korean League of Legends. They've got a match between two big name Korean teams, but then you go down and there are 22,000 people watching some guy I've never heard of before playing Fortnite. Some dude playing Hearthstone, the card game. And so these people have their own little subcultures and communities, and they form their own language in a way that is so much more organic than would happen in a talk show scenario or in a regular celebrity culture scenario. Like it's something that happens in passing, and next thing you know, it's become a meme. It's something the guy made a mistake, and then that becomes like this. And if you think about that, I mean, it's been like that with movies for a long time. People will make a quote out of something that was kind of just a silly moment in a movie. Maybe it's a mistake in a movie or something like that, but it stands out. And next thing you know, that becomes like
A meme.
A meme. Yeah. I mean, it's been memeing. We've been memeing since who knows how long, right? But these memes can form so much quicker. And the internet really has been a big part of it. But gaming has been a bigger part of it than a lot of people want to acknowledge.
Well, so I grew up. It's fascinating to me that I grew up watching my friends play video games. I never had a game console growing up, and I always went to my friend's house and I'd watch. I mean, my favorite pastime was going watch. Every now and then I'd play, but basically, my brother and I would go to our friends' houses and watch them play video games. And now, when I go to YouTube, the biggest PewDiePie and some of the biggest names on YouTube are those, and then Twitch evolved out of this idea of watching people play video games as if it's so let's talk a little bit about the spectator aspect of video gaming.
Yeah, I mocked it when it first was happening, and it's like, it's almost like all of us have selective memory loss about this stuff because I mean, people have been playing board games for a very long time, or card games, very long time, and not everyone who sits around in the drawing room while someone plays cards is playing the cards. And there's a scene, I can think of a scene right now from Pride and Prejudice, the BBC version, in which Elizabeth Bennet is not playing cards. the other group is sitting at the table. She's, reading a book or something like that. And someone else playing piano, and Darcy's writing a letter or something. So not everyone is sitting there playing the game, but they're experiencing the game, right?
But they're not spectating it.
They're not necessarily spectating it, but I think even that would happen. I mean, I think you would have times where people would sit there, just to be in part of the conversation, watch what's going on. And like you said, when I was a kid, my buddy had a computer, and so I'd go over and we'd play Civilization. And I say we'd play, but usually, I mean, usually he would control. Maybe sometimes we trade off. We played Wolfenstein when it first came out, and I was too scared of that game. Like, I could not play it, but I watched every level of that. I could not play it. That game, it just freaked me out. I could not get that first person shooter thing, but I thought I was playing it because I was playing along with him
vicariously.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved that. Like, we played through, there was an Indiana Jones game, Indiana Jones Last Crusade, and then they also did another one, Indiana Jones and the Age of Atlantis or something like that. And I loved those games. I still think about how there were these little cool Easter eggs and just different plot points you could do depending on what little thing you did, It was so fun. It was like playing the movie. I love that. And so not even as an active participant, just as a passive observer, being able to, be able to say something like, oh, maybe we should try this. And yeah, that's a good idea. And he would type, you would click on that thing. Well, now, and so I did make fun of this for a while until one of my viewers, probably about 6 years ago, he was like, well, the reason I watch these things, it's like, sometimes I don't have time to play the whole game. And I just feel like, killing a few minutes and watching a buddy play it. And I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And it's like, it's kind of like sports. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It's not,
and it's a lower investment than sports, because you don't have to sit there and watch, like a 3-hour game, like you can watch like 30 minutes and
I was gonna say, it's not like watching sports. It's exactly talk more about this. Why don't you have, like, can't you just watch part of a sports game?
That's true. But I think in terms of like with Twitch, because they're playing anytime, it is more of like playing with a buddy. It is more dropping in and into guys' dorm rooms. Oh, where are you at in Metroid now? Like, oh man, I love this part, dude. Like, so you can kind of peanut gallery for 10 minutes before you go to class. There's nothing like that incomparable in traditional media, right? So now, like, buddies can sit around, shoot the breeze, and and really, and chat is like that. Twitch chat is like that. It's like a locker room. People just throw. I mean, and it gets bad quick, just like video games get bad quick. Because you just got people just talking out their butt, and then you have the anonymity thing, which shields a lot of people from repercussions, so they'll say more than they want to say or would say in public, which is a whole nother topic. But I think that that's, I think, the allure is that it's like playing with your buddies. It's just a much more informal, direct environment. You donate in to their Twitch channel, and whatever you say will pop up on screen. So people tell knock jokes and just bad puns and stuff like that, and try to get the guy to crack a smile. It's just a different dynamic than anything. It's like if you merged radio talk shows with sports, with sitting around having some beers with your buddies while you watch them play Madden. It's like all those things together.
Well, so the thing that sports doesn't have, so you can play vicariously through your favorite sports player, but with it takes vicarious play to a whole new level of engagement.
Yes, absolutely.
So you're engaged on a meta level.
Yeah.
On a meta level where you're so, like, in the chat, you feel like you're part of the game.
That's right.
Which and in a sense you are contributing to the stream.
Yes. And so sometimes, and you'll see this in some of the best, I mean, there's some great I'm a Cutie Pie videos that have been, that his editor has cut, and he actually has an editor. I mean, again, things that people would not think of outside of this industry. But his editor will find these little funny moments where some viewer gets to play with him and the viewer carries him, so the viewer is the one that's actually helping him win the game. And, by the end of the game, he's like, good job, bro. It's like, so I mean, when are you going to have that opportunity to play with LeBron? Like you're in chat, it's like, hey man, can I play with you? And, every once in a while, like, okay, yeah, let's do it, bud. And, that's unreal. So it's pretty fun.
It's fun. And there's something, it's a whole new universe of competition. I was thinking about even even as opposed to console playing. So it's the one thing that there was something deeply interesting and attractive to me about this whole MOBA movement was that it was the evolution of it, was being part of the evolution of it, seeing how it became a mod to, like you said, every new iteration that came out had something new, but it maintained this basic archetype.
Right.
And when you think about it, when I think about it, the like Nintendo and PlayStation, they just don't have that sort of consistency, like where you have things that come out, different iterations, 2 years, 3 years between each other, 1 year maybe, but you don't have anything where you can play every day. There's something a little new. There's something, and like we just said, like there's this feedback from the people that are playing in it, like on a consistent, regular. It's a life. It's created a life.
It is, and it is a form of. Again, it's I don't even really know how to describe it other than saying that it's like. So when Lost was out, there were the Lost message boards, and I was on them after every episode. I was a diehard fan of that show until I ceased to be in the last 20 minutes of the last episode. I was holding on to the bitter end, baby. I was true believing all the way to the end. I was another reason why I don't feel like I can be duped by a religion or cult again, is because I was part of the Lost cult, and it all fell apart. Yeah, so I was on the message boards, and I was, oh man, yeah, well, it was this theory and this theory, and the thing is, it was kind of a new era of storytelling, because some of the Lost writers were looking at what people, what are the popular theories, what are these people saying, and there were times that it was almost like a choose your own adventure at times, where people were like, man, we hate these characters. I wish they weren't on the show. And then the next episode, they killed those characters. That was one of the best moments in the show for me, when they killed those characters, and we're like,
which characters? Which one are you talking about?
Oh, these two side characters who weren't great actors, and they did an episode about them, and we're like, oh man, this show sucks.
Oh,
and
is
then
that one guy who blew up?
No, not that one. That was kind of interesting too. No, it was this one. These two people got buried alive. They got bit by some spider, and it paralyzed them, and so everyone thought they were dead, and they buried them. And so at the end of the episode, it was just like the camera just hangs on them, the mound, and everyone else, no one else is the wiser. Only the viewer knows that they're not dead, they're paralyzed.
Wow.
And it was basically the writers giving the audience a middle finger. Oh, you hated these people? Did you hate them this much? And it was, I've never felt like that, in a storytelling scenario where it's almost like, yeah, you chose this adventure. How do you like it? And I was like, oh man, I'm a terrible person. This is horrible. Like, because you actually kind of liked the people by the end of the episode. You're like, oh, well, they're annoying, but they're not that bad. Oh, we're bad. So I, with video games, you can take that to a new level, because now it really is like they're listening to the feedback from people on Reddit, and they're like, okay, we need to make this change. So they make that, they make certain changes. And then you've got the Twitch streamers who are adding influence, and then you've got the people watching, and you got the people playing, and so there's this just dynamic ecosystem that could not exist in a studio system model or a publishing model. Like it is this very, and one of the other things I really like about League of Legends, where I'm a little tangent on this thing, is that how multicultural and indicative of the world that we live in right now. It's a Chinese telecom right now, Tencent, huge company, absolutely enormous company. And they are the ones that I think they've actually bought out Riot Games. Riot Games started as an American company. Riot still has full creative control, but they're bankrolled by Tencent, this giant. And Tencent incidentally made the movie King Kong Skull Island. That was another one, something that they bankrolled. So they got their hands on a lot of projects. And so it's a Chinese bankrolled company, a American creative company that's ruled by Korean players. Like, you just can't beat Korea. Like, Korea, they're just the best at this game. They've always been, I think, the best at StarCraft, and now they're the best at League of Legends, and you can't beat them. Like, unbeatable. Wow. So I think that's an interesting, again, when people are telling us, like, I think all humans have equal amounts of dignity. I don't think all humans or all cultures are equally valuable at doing different tasks And so someone has brought this up on one of these libertarian things, like saying, I want Italian food, I want a German car, I want I can't remember what they said about Britain, I want a British railroad, or I don't know, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it was just like going through, I want French music, and so they showed how each of these places has an element that is unique, and that's when I say I am a cross-cultural communicator. Like, I don't believe in this multiculturalism. We all believe the same thing. We all have the same strengths and we all have the same weaknesses. Like, that's just not true. Different places have different strengths. And League of Legends is a perfect testament to that. Like, it's just 3 different countries working together on this insanely awesome game. And it's not like a top-down scenario. It's really a give and take, and that's organically happened. I mean, no one planned on Korea being the best at League of Legends,
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And it's also interesting to me that the game that is winning right now, and probably will win, I don't know, in the near future. So League of Legends, it basically is, it's Dungeons and Dragons, just, digitized and limited.
Yeah, that's right. It's Dungeons and Dragons with mechanics, with the emphasis on mechanical, user interface, I guess,
because World of Warcraft was more like Dungeons and Dragons,
right?
Because it was unlimited.
Yeah.
It was just a world in which you could make your own, it was limited, of course, by you had,
but it's huge. Yeah, no, it's enormous. Like, when I found out how big those maps are, and on like those, whatever the expansions are, I'm so, what in the world? Yeah, it's called a massively multiplayer online game. That's what World of Warcraft is considered.
Massively, man.
And it is a massive map. I mean, I am blown away by Breath of the Wild, but Breath of the Wild is like nothing. I think it's like one quadrant of WoW. I feel like it's just so enormous.
And do you know anybody who still plays WoW? I don't.
I don't. But when when Legion came out in 2016, I remember tuning into Twitch, and it was #1 on Twitch for that, couple 3 days when the new expansion came out. So there's like a latent viewership. So let's see, right now on Twitch, let's see where WoW is. Yeah, it's like right under Overwatch. So it's like WoW and StarCraft, I think, will never go away. Like they're just too pivotal in the gaming landscape. But yeah, I think it'll probably always have a place.
Well, okay. And so then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of league. What a league is, the fact that it's called League of Legends, this kind of gaming really does, the lifeblood of it are the leagues. It's the group of people that always play together. It's your group of people that you like to play with. Right. I don't think this game would be as popular this game would not even be close to popular if it was just a solo endeavor.
Right. And and I guess that's, again, one of the problems I see with North America is that we tend to think of it we have this thing called solo queue, where you just can queue up by yourself, and it's good for practicing your individual mechanical play, but often not very great at working on team play, because a lot of there's just a lot of miscommunication happens, and cross purposes working against each other. And a lot of people do play League of Legends almost like StarCraft, where it's just like they're on a one-man mission, and I'm playing against my own teammates. I see that sometimes, just like people are like actively campaigning about something, and giving the game up basically just out of spite. But as far as it does remind me of, even to another level though. I remember playing team games or multiplayer games when I was in high school, playing Mario Party. You were competing against each other, but again, it was this sort of Mario Party, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. Like those were great games for groups of people to play. Perfect Dark was great because you could play against bots, and you could get that group mentality, yes. Like a team of 4. And there's something about being able to play as a team. And League, when you have that 5-man, and now with on the computers that we can all talk to each other, so you're not even having to type and chat, so you're constantly there's not much like it. I mean, the closest analogy would be war, so or
that's interesting.
or war games like Counter-Strike, those kind of things.
Yeah, like as if you can't, right? So like something like football, if they could be talking to each other in a over what is it called, Discord, that would be fascinating if that's the way sports went. It's all of a sudden it would work best with football because you already have a helmet on. If they could be
Right.
constantly talking to each other.
Well, I mean, don't they have something like that? I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like, but they're only talking with the sideline, or do they? I don't
Well,
know. Do the
the
rules about it?
quarterback is the one who mostly
Right.
communicates. I don't think any of the other. I think
Yeah,
it's just the quarterback.
it kind of is interesting. I've been thinking about tech interfaces, and I think eventually, we are going to get to this point where we're not keyboard dependent anymore,
Mm.
where things are more gesture based. And when that happens, or when we get the chips in our heads, it's going to be kind of crazy because like things like Pacific Rim, like you're going to be able to, oh, he's moving left, I'm going to move left too. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I think that sounds like science fiction now, but no, there are people working on that kind of stuff. This transhumanism or whatever, like they're going to the next level, trying to in inject cybernetic technology or whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah, so kind of crazy to think about, but I do think that as far as interfaces go, these video games are the closest you can get to that sort of thing. That
Well,
what is the word? Synergy, I guess. Yeah, with someone else in terms of will. And when you are all together, the best moments I've ever played this game is when we had this great comeback where the other team underestimated our late game potential because we were playing for the end game, and then you get this big massive team fight, and everyone does all their roles perfectly, and it's just such a satisfying feeling, when the other team thinks that they have you, and then everyone comes together is like, no, I mean, it is like that Sparta thing, everyone's got their shields together and you're integrated, and there's no, you underestimated the defense, my friend. So it is really fun.
and it can play out. It can play out a lot better teamwork wise. I was thinking in football, even if you could talk to each other, it's so there. It's so simple. There's not that much. It's so macro too.
Right.
Whereas you wouldn't be like, oh, it's too late. Like, oh, there's no micro processes within the game. Whereas there's tons. I mean, that's all it is in something like League.
Right. And see, and I made that point when we're talking about Ender's Game that all of our sports are just analogies or metaphors for war. But they're really kind of weak analogies. Their symbolism isn't really as close to one-to-one. And we play something like League, or especially like CS:GO, it's direct. You know exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about war. And again, when you read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, trying to apply that to football, I think that would take some, some complex calculations there. But to make the comparison to League, to apply those lessons learned from World of Warcraft about high ground. I mean, I'm sorry from Art of War, to apply those lessons from Sun Tzu. It makes sense. You'd be like, oh, I could see how I could play this. Let's come up with a play, that kind of uses this as the backbone.
Yeah. Well, now there is the danger, though. I know that you've talked about replacing sports with esports, with games like League, but I think there is a danger. I was thinking about this. There is a benefit of regular sports. Being physically active adds a component that you really can't add to something like League.
Yeah. So what I think, my thought on the future of this is like when I've decided, because I started running again, I'll probably play softball, like the local softball league when time comes, in the fall, because hopefully my legs will be in better shape and I won't be straining my thigh after every run. But I think you're right. I think we should keep those things in parallel. But what I think, like League of Legends teams, because there are a lot of professional League of Legends teams, and what these gaming teams should do is try to, in the same way that the military doesn't just exercise the bodies of their recruits, they also exercise their minds. They, get them performing certain tasks. They get them disciplined, and so they're really, prepared when they come out of the military to face any challenge.
Mm.
They can be good at business, they can be good at law, they can be good at science, they can be good at engineering. So like I think you kind of want to treat your league team something like that, where you have it balanced, where it's not just exercising your your fingers and your mind, but that you're actually, maybe you have a sport that you play on the side, or maybe you teach some taekwondo or karate or what is it, jujitsu. Maybe there's some sort of analog that you can do there, because I do think I don't know if sports have a shelf life. I just think that at a certain point, it's kind of like religious festival observances. We are oversaturated with the number of sports and religious festivals in the world. And at
Mm.
a certain point, the more that we interact, we're not going to have time for all of them. Cricket and baseball are not going to be able to coexist. Like, one of them is going to have to give up at a certain point, so I just, they're gonna, it's survival of the fittest when it comes to sports. And I think some sports are going to eventually die out just from lack of interest. How many, I mean, when you look at the kids that show up to these live league shows, live league games, there are a lot of people showing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's this latent group of people who just don't care at all about American football. And I'm just warning the industry, you give this 20 more years, you're not going to know what hit you.
However, there's a new meta involved with football, and that is fantasy football. That is pulling those types in.
That is true. That is a big part. I think the speculative part of sports has always been.
See, I'm a huge, and eventually I want to do a football, maybe a fantasy football reverse redaction, but I'm a huge fantasy football player. And
see, I guess my thing is, like, if you can get other things that can solve the same goals as football or fantasy football, like if you can just do UFC plus League of Legends plus poker, why do you need fantasy football or football? Like, you get the physical, you get the mental, and all of these are better representations of what it means to be in conflict. Poker, like I watched a poker match just a hand the other day, and I was like, gosh, I just need to start watching poker. I mean, it just boggles my mind seeing the balls on some of these guys. Like when they have no cards and it's just like you see something switch in their eyes and they're like, I got you. And they know they got him, even though they don't have the hand. And it's just,
well, it's because football is a combination of both. It's a combination of UFC and poker,
right. And that's what I mean. It's worked up until now, but if you have things that better, represent it, like, I just don't know. I think all these industries, these sporting industries, have gotten so big and so fat and so cumbersome and so monopolized. Like the NFL is a corrupt organization. It's just,
oh, for sure.
It's just, and from numerous angles, it's super corrupt. And I just don't think a corrupt lumbering infrastructure necessarily has the agility to withstand really fastly changing market realities where people don't have time for this stuff. So yeah, that's my theory on it. I think I honestly think you're going to see more dudes who are just like kind of fed up with the politics of some of these sports. And I don't mean, and I'm not saying what happened this year politically with football. I'm talking about the politics of being a player, like me, like the politics of playing violin in an orchestra. Like there's micro politics, not political correctness or anything like that, but I'm just
polity, if you will.
Yeah, it's just the certain things that you have to do, hoops you have to jump through, forms you have to fill out, blah 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 blah. And you just at a certain point I just someone punch me in the face. Like let's just fight, for crying out loud. And I just think at a certain point there's this fundamental like this is just, we're just kind of hemming and hawing here, and we're not doing what we're actually talking about. Like, we just want to fight. It's like, I think I was talking to my dad about this. Like, when Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton did their duel, like, back then the gloves were off. Like, you insult somebody, you slap somebody in the face, like just with a word, and that's like, you're treading on thin ice, dude. Like, you don't get to say, oh, daddy policeman, come save me. Like, no, you threatened him. He said, I challenge you to duel. If you say, oh, I'm not going to do that, well, you're disgraced for life. So you have to say yes, and one of you's dead. And so we have lost that. We have been
The stakes.
Yeah, the stakes. That's right. The stakes to play in real situations have just been so domesticated and antiseptic that people just. I think there's this frustration. I just think you're going to see an explosion in MMA and an explosion in jiu-jitsu and all these sorts of things, an explosion in these pure athletic pursuits like running and marathons and swimming and the thing that I'm doing now with this water workout stuff, surfing, extreme sports, where there's not, it's just it's you or death, like where you're riding that fine line next to death. And like, these other sports where it's all kind of subsidized, like I don't know if they're going to have what it takes to withstand the upcoming onslaught.
Well, I think the thing that will help them in that will be the fact that the onslaught will be so diversified and will be fragmented.
Well, but see, yeah, and I guess onslaught's not the word. It's the barbarians within the gates. Like these, you can't make money if people don't watch.
But lots of people watch.
They watch now, but are you really? When you go on League, how many people are talking about football in the chat? When are people watching football when Tyler One is playing League of Legends? Like his fans, like his subscriber base, they're not. I'm just telling you, like it's not, and that number is only 30,000 right now. But that 30,000 people are watching one dude play one game. Like, you can do that math on that. Whenever Lyric streams, whatever he's playing, it doesn't matter what he's playing. Whatever Lyric streams, he's getting 50 to 60 to 70,000 people. Whenever Ninja streams Fortnite right now, he's got like 70,000 or something. That's like a whole stadium watching a football game, and this is just one person, again, just infrastructurally. So one of my favorite scenes in cinema history is from How to Train Your Dragon. And it's the final battle between this little kid on a Night Fury and this lumbering, gigantic Cthulhu-like dragon monster.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's just so indicative. Like when I saw it, the first thing I thought of was the press. Just the lumbering infrastructure of, this act of Congress that takes to get this thing off the ground. When it gets off the ground, it's going to annihilate everything. But if you're faster and more nimble, so this little Night Fury takes out this thing because it's more nimble. And I just think that's a sign of the times. That's the zeitgeist. And so video games, you can have a one-man studio make one game that can catch, the feel of the moment. Like, did you see that one, Getting Over It or whatever, the one with the guy who's in this pot? It makes no sense. Like, who comes up with this stuff?
But he made a game?
Some guy made a game, but the game is literally, you're a dude in this pot. It looks like you're an amputee, and you have this sledgehammer, and you use this sledgehammer to get over these obstacles. And it's so weird. It's surreal. And this guy he monotones over it with these like motivational quotes. And it's like literally a 5-minute video game, but it will take you probably 5 hours to try to figure out how to beat because it's so frustrating. But it became like this whole meme, and I think it's like, I want to say it's like $10 for the game or something like that. And just we're in a world where agility is going to be much more valuable in the long term. And so I'm not putting a shelf life on these other sports, but something must break. You have to have people in order to.
You're right. I'm skeptical of the what is it called? Non-physical. What is that? That's the metaphysical machine.
Right.
On the internet, when we talk about stakes,
there's
no buy-in. There's very little buy-in. So you can get, thousands, hundreds, millions of people to watch, and then the next day you get one, depending. It's so fickle.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's not fickle anymore. It's not. If I'm a Cutie Pie streaming, he's not going to get one viewer. It could be 1 in the morning. He's not going to get one viewer. So yeah, it's still early stages. But the fact that we're even saying that 30 years into this experiment is kind of silly. And nobody in 1965 would have predicted Stan Lee would be this media mogul, I mean, oh, he's got this, he's got this stupid Spider-Man character, this guy in red and blue. Well, like
Yeah,
that's going to take off. I mean, can you imagine any culture critic talking about that back then? They'd have been making so much fun of that. And video games are so much more of an elevated, evolved art form than comic books. I mean, come on, dude. Like this is they're in a totally another realm. I mean, video games are the most evolved form of art the humankind has ever come up with. I say that unequivocally. The most evolved form of artwork humans have ever come up with because of the interactive element. And it's the confluence of everything that we've done up until this point. You have performance art, you have music, you have motion pictures, and you have story, and you have plot, and you have theme. You have all of these things, and then you have user interaction. So it's just, there's no beating that. Like, and people can say all they want, but I mean, it's the only reason that we haven't seen it take over Hollywood is because nobody has understood the medium. But everyone, well, probably 10 years older than us and under, who has played video games and who has that aha moment, my moment from Chrono Trigger. I had one of the moments playing Breath of the Wild, actually playing this one little side quest. Like these we've all had, anybody who's had those moments, those aha moments playing a video game, they are advocates of the art. And when they direct a video game feature film, or they play the video game of question and stream it on Twitch, okay, like it's game time. Like the industry will never recover. Like it'll never be the same. I mean, it's just like comics have destroyed Hollywood. They've taken over Hollywood. Like, I mean, think about it. I mean, like, and really, and look who has a cartoon company and a comic book company are the number one, Walt Disney, Marvel. Like, so
what is the common theme there?
I think it's just approachability. It's something that kids can get. It's something that adults can get. It's something timeless. It's conflict that is depicted in a way that couldn't be done by anything else. I was watching a little bit of the climax from Moby Dick the other day because Peterson, Jordan B. Peterson, he's talking about Moby Dick all the time. He's just big on. I mean, I'm sorry, not Moby Dick. Brain dead. Pinocchio. So Disney's Pinocchio, and it's a whale. They're both whales. So I was watching when they come out of the way, like there's no way you could get that climax back then, and when that movie was made. Like the only way you could do it was with animation. Like there was no budget on planet Earth, no special effects existing that could have made Moby Dick at the time. I mean, that made Pinocchio at the time that the cartoon was made, So I feel like we're at a place now. Video games have that same ability, and it took a long time for Disney not only just to come into its own. I mean, I think the die was cast once they made Pinocchio, but they didn't become the industry powerhouse that they are now until much later. But I mean, they're a dynasty. They're a freaking country, for crying out loud.
Well, and I think that and constant characters. So Mickey Mouse, Wolverine,
right?
These are things that people that they evolved, but they also were a constant within the company.
Yeah, Mario. I mean, that's for Nintendo. I mean, he has become every bit the icon that Mickey is, and
that's, I think Hollywood. The problem with Hollywood and kids, especially connecting with it, is they didn't have that one thing to hang their hat on.
Yeah, when it is a franchise, it's like what, James Bond. I mean, even James Bond, like it's more of a type than it is really a like Mario or Mickey. I mean, Mario or Mickey or Darth Vader. I mean, those are people that you're never going to forget. But again, how long can you keep Vader in the meta? Like not that long. But
you can keep him longer than, I was just thinking about this, is all our heroes that we like today, they're going to change. Their faces are going to change because they're going to get old and die. Like with Hollywood, with cartoons, you can keep the same face forever.
And again, this is another asset for video games in the next century. And I just think the 21st century, the 20th century was the century of film. And the 21st century, it's the century of video games, like video game. And it's going to pay for the way for whatever else comes next. And if you look at League of Legends, I mean, there's 120 some characters, these champions, that all of them have their own unique little story, their own unique style, theme, mood. And, you know, that Riot, they've changed the lore. They call it lore for a champion. They've changed it for a lot of these champions. But sometimes I was really impressed with the paragraph backstory, or, you know, half-page backstory they'd give some of these champions. Like some of them was like, wow, geez, that's pretty dark backstory there. I had no idea.
You know what I think will defeat League of Legends when it comes along is going to be the Cuphead version of it. You know, it's going to be something that's, so the problem with League is it's not very approachable by little kids.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You got the booby, sexy, violent, disgusting. I can't let my little kids play, you know.
Right, and that is true. I think that it is definitely the 13 to 22-year-old bracket where you've got you're not even supposed to play it under a certain, I can't remember what the age, when you download what it tells you to, what the age is supposed to be. But yeah, I do see what you're saying. Of course, that really hasn't necessarily stopped Marvel's rise to ascendancy, and then that's why I think we're not in the Disney age. We're in the post-Marvel age, and people's laxity on these issues has increased as time has gone on. And the enforcement ability is much less. Before before it was like, if enforced, if you're under 13, you must be accompanied by adults, PG-13. Like, well, now who's enforcing this stuff? Most parents are not paying attention to what their kids are doing online, and they have no idea that their son knows every cuss word in the book because they watched Tyler One on stream, or iDubbbz, or Joji.
But if you think about it, you get the G rating of, you were talking about this earlier. You touched on it. The idea of Minecraft. If you add task completion and competitive arena type play to something like Minecraft, I don't like. I would play that right now.
That's
I've
true.
always thought when I'm playing Minecraft, I'm always thinking, man, I wish there was something. Like, I wish there was something. I wish I could compete against people. There's ways to compete against people, but not in a way where you're trying to destroy their base to get gold.
Well, I'm sure that in Roblox or Minecraft, there's some MOBA mod, right? We should probably just try that and just see how bad it is, because I feel like the mechanics of in-game, again, people are going to be doing these weird adaptations where they're going to be like jumping around and there's going to be some little glitch. I don't know, but it could be interesting as an experiment to see how it would work. And maybe like you said, like I have thought about this before, like what if the next evolution from League, or maybe not an evolution, but a diversion, would be like a multifaceted civilization style thing in which maybe you don't have to win only by violence. Maybe you win by building the best cathedral or something like that. Like, like maybe, like you said, maybe it's task based. It's like, oh, in League, we talk about objective control. You got to destroy their turrets. Oh, like what if it's also building turrets? And, you get kind of that feel in StarCraft, right?
What if,
it's not you're destroying stuff, you're actually building stuff. Maybe you're committing espionage. Oh no, so this gets real meta. Think about this, Judah. Oh man, we're thinking ahead here. I hope somebody's listening to this and think about this. Okay, think about this if you're a game designer. What if, oh man, dude, what if you could commit espionage by getting one of the members of the other team who's mad at their people in their own chat to join your team? They actually switch from blue to red. Like, what would that add to League of Legends? Think about how much more or less salty people would be.
It's possible. They had a function like that in Heroes of New Earth, because people were dropping out so much that you could switch teams, but both teams had to agree on something like that. So that you could even out the teams. That would be fascinating.
That would be fast. And that would be just, I think, a microcosm. That would be like if you could have a little sandbox mode just to see what would happen with that. Because eventually, at first, people would game it. People be like, oh, I'm joining this team, but this guy's, I'm this guy's buddy. Like, something. There would be like some sort of ways. But I think with some, deep learning in the back end, and you gotta admire. I mean, as much as we talk about getting frustrated with how the matchup works in League of Legends, you gotta admire how this program
Yes.
like pits you against people who are of a similar skill level. Like
It's amazing.
it is pretty amazing. Now it breaks quite a bit. I mean, there are times that you end up somehow or another playing against somebody that's just way out of your range, and you're like, what is this guy doing in bronze? Why is he in bronze? Like he just has like challenger level stats. Like, why is he down here? So I mean, it is a little bit confusing. But yes, for the game designers out there, if you haven't thought about that yet, I'm sure a lot of people have thought about it. But that what if there are other ways in a MOBA to accomplish your goals, like from a civilization perspective, where, in Civilization, you could win by creating the most wonders of the world. You could win by getting to the moon the fastest or something. You didn't have to conquer everyone.
Or maybe just incentivize it, like if you build, you get gold or something, like
right.
I don't know. Well, we've gone way over an hour, so
right.
It's an interesting topic. To sort of close this out, what can we take into today? What practical? How can we apply this? So what? All these games.
So what I'm doing, I'm trying to, we've tentatively called it Little League or Saturday Scrims. We're doing these Saturday morning playings with my nephews, and trying to play it as a team with the way that it's meant to be played, instead of with this solo, sort of jock style solo queue mentality where, we just, I'm just look how good I was there, man. Yeah. It's more about, look how bad I was there, man. How can I fix that? And let's get some feedback from one another, and, just treating it like a real sport. And so we've only done 2 weeks so far. But
3?
we're gonna,
No, 2?
I think it's just 2.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm editing videos of the tapes. I'm looking at the film, analyzing the film, and kind of critiquing our play as we go along. And so I think that's one way. And I think the other thing is just, I don't know, just to be part of the space. For me, it means probably branching out into some other games, which means I am curtailing my league time. I've been a monogamous league gamer pretty much for the last 5 years. But, playing Breath of the Wild with my son has been a lot of fun. Like, he likes watching me play, and he runs around as my helper in the living room. Like, he actually runs around, like, he's like, oh, I'm gonna get this thing, and like, so he's he's next gen. He's already thinking of the maneuver based virtual reality version.
Nice.
But so we play together, and it's been good for me to realize, oh yeah, there are other video games, and to remember why I fell in love with them, because I fell in love playing with these single player games, and just to be a part of this space, because again, there's a tendency, I don't know if you read Matt Walsh's post about why he hates, why he thinks video games need to be reined in. But I really disagreed with it fundamentally. And he's kind of a spitfire on the conservative side. And I just totally I found it, it actually made me mad. But I just feel like we will have that tendency, if we're not careful, whether we're on the left or the right, the left to be, PO'd about the depiction of women, the right to be, PO'd about whatever it is, violence or sexuality or whatever. More and more, those two seem to overlap in the things they're mad about. But there's a tendency to be xenophobic about what you don't understand, right? Like, oh, fear of the unknown, right? And so there are all these boogeymen that the left and right are concocting, like, oh, look at this terrible video. Look what kids are playing these days. And so, the White House released a video this week about violence in video games. And you look at it, I've never even seen half of these games. They're super graphic, super violent. But, saying, like, using that instead of just going to, oh, here's League, here's Battlegrounds, here's Fortnite, here's Hearthstone, here's Dota 2, Counter-Strike is the first one that's actually like realistically violent.
Yeah.
There's StarCraft, there's Overwatch, there's World of Warcraft, Path of Exile, Minecraft, Yakuza. Okay, so we're like 12 games in on Twitch, and now we finally found one that's going to be a little more violent. Like, I just find that it's just such a stupid. It is this part for the whole hypothesis, and that's the problem with xenophobia. You always take the worst example of something you don't understand and make that the cherry picked data that you're going to use to prove this needs to be banned. And
yeah.
And so I think if people are scared of this, start playing with your kids. Start with Minecraft or Roblox. Start there and branch out. And you might even find that things that, like when I was in high school or college, I was like, I was such a goody Two Shoes Christian that I just written all video games off. And when I saw people playing Grand Theft Auto, I was judging them. I was like, oh, you people playing Grand Theft Auto, you're sinning. You need to get that sin off our campus. I really was like that. I actually confronted a guy one time about it. He just looked at me like, what an idiot. And now I'm just on the total opposite side of it. You know, you don't just have to play Grand Theft Auto to hook up with hookers. You know, like there are other reasons to play that game. And so the typical response for someone who is mortified by video games is to cherry pick those moments in a video game, you know, so
I do think we have to be careful though, as far as the dangers of video games. I think as someone who fell prey to time wasting and it sort of consumed my life, I almost lost my job back in 2007. We have to be careful. Like we have, like everything, there has to be moderation, and I think that comes from accountability. As we team play, we can help each other in that area.
And yeah, exactly. And that's why I think we need to have quit having these things in isolation, though. You know, I mean, nobody has a problem with a person playing football 14 hours a day because they get paid, you know, $1 million. Well, I mean, me and you do, but you know, we're not necessarily the norm. But you know, most people don't have a problem with that because that's his job. And well, yeah, he makes a disproportionate amount of money doing a game. You know, like we need to rein that in. You know, so you know, if people want to lecture about that, then they can, you know, lecture about, you know, the people who have concussions in the NFL because they've been playing this sport too long. You know.
Oh yeah, well, I think to your point, like. You know, like soccer, people I know so many families that spend like, you know, I can't go to church today because we have soccer where, you know, I have soccer every day, you know, there's practice. Like I think in the same way that can consume our lives. But the difference is I think it's easier though to slip into
I agree. But I mean it's the same. It's the same thing like with porn or going out and hooking up with prostitutes. I mean, it's going to be much easier to become a porn addict than it is a prostitute addict. It's going to seem safer, but in my opinion, the porn is actually more destructive. I actually think that, you know.
So are the video games more destructive?
Yeah, maybe that's where I'm the hypocrite because I don't think so unless you let it get to become the addiction. And so that's the thing. Are you letting it be? And I think it is more difficult for like soccer to become an addiction for most people just because there is that physical thing built in.
It's more,
so that is true. Yeah, and that's true. You have to go somewhere, you have to do something. So yeah, okay, I will take that point. I'll cede that point that you do need to have something in place so you don't, because it is true. I mean, kids have died playing video games. I mean, this has happened, you know, or, you know, usually they're not kids, they're adults, you know, young men who've just haven't left the apartment for 30 hours straight, you know.
Grown children.
Yeah, you'll see some of these Twitch streamers, they'll do like a 30-hour stream or something like that. Like, dude, I mean, it gets to the point where it can actually be dangerous, you know. So so that is true. I mean, I guess like with anything, I guess my tendency is to overreact just because I see this, you know, this tendency to want to prohibit something. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, I guess we just gotta be careful not to overreact to the overreactors.
That's true. Yeah, that would be true.
Yeah. But I really appreciate the practice you've been doing on Saturday morning. I'm still very terrible at League of Legends, but I will get better. It's very frustrating to me because with Heroes of New Earth, I spent hours and like days like researching different builds and things, and then I get to League and there's really no one-to-one. Like all that training and research I did was for naught.
Well, and so what will end up happening, and then this is the other problem with League is depending on the patch, you know, the current update that you're on, it changes so much. Like there's a big change this week where you actually won a game with it when we got a certain buff, we got a certain item, and when we apply that item to this one minion, he becomes like another champion. Like, and that didn't even happen 2 months ago. Like this is, you know, I mean, you could do a similar version to it 2 months ago, but it wasn't as powerful as it is right now. It's like literally having another person on your team for a minute there. So there's things that there's an ebb and flow to the way that you play this game, which I just find fascinating.
Well, it's been a great conversation, Ford. It's been a long conversation. It must have been a great conversation because It's almost been 2 hours, hasn't it?
Yeah, I will talk about League way more than I need to, probably.
Unfortunately, none of our viewers care.
Yeah. We'll have to share this with some of our League friends, and maybe they'll pay attention. Or maybe if you're young, you can share this with your parents about, two adults who actually like this video game that they're probably mad at, because like, why are they playing this video game? Why can't they just quit in the middle of the game? You can't quit in the middle of a game of League of Legends, parents. Just stop it.
That's why my wife hates it.
Right.
She's like, what? I can't.
Just pause.
You can't.
Like I've gotten like people, coming over to my house. I'm like, yeah, I'll be with you in a minute. Like, oh, you just can't. Oh, I haven't seen you in a month, Ford. Like, dude, you don't want to talk to me right now. I'm gonna punch you in the face. Take a seat.
Oh, that's worse than me, but not in some ways. I remember there's this famous story people tell of me where they came over and I had Annalise duct taped to my chest so that I could play. She was supposed to be napping. She woke up.
Oh man, dude, that's legendary right there. That's good. That's like in King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters, when you hear the kid in the background, "Daddy, come wipe my butt." He's about to set the Donkey Kong world record. "Daddy, come wipe my butt." Oh man, here I have a sketch here. We need to do this year. All right, I want to do this sketch. Like someone, that attitude they have with League of Legends, apply it to any other sport. You got a bunch of people like you get, it's in the middle of the game and like, "Hey John," and the guy just walks on the field. "Hey John, it's a long time no see, man. How you doing?" "Dude, why aren't you talking? Why are you on the ground?"
That would be great. That would be.
It's a PSA for PSA for people who don't play video games.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. All right, well, I gotta go.
All right, man. Thanks.
Speaking of losing my job, I will. We'll do this again next week. So we're gonna talk about Jordan Peterson next week, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do it again. This time we'll redact our previous conversation. Actually, get to the point here, because we talked more about people talking about Jordan Peterson than we did about Jordan Peterson
and our feelings and stuff. Yeah. One thing this is what I was going to talk to you about. What do you think of the idea of reverse redaction? And so what we'd do is we'd go through each week. So maybe at the end of our season, go through each episode and sort of go back and say, well, you know what? After thinking about this, and just have little short. I
do like that idea, because there are some things, even I said today, that I'd kind of like to take another look at. Definitely not redact. I think we need things part of public record to show that, people do change their minds about this stuff. And also there's something about Thor Ragnarok that I still have not properly thought through. I think Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther that I really have not quite parsed through, that I want to try to figure out.
Okay. Yeah. So let's shoot for that as our end of our season. I'll take a look at how many episodes we have and kind of look for a round number to end on.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just to put it in perspective, right now, League of Legends has 196,000 live viewers. There you go. That's over 120,000 more than second place, which is Battlegrounds.
That's crazy. That's another thing I want to talk about. Maybe after Jordan Peterson, talk about SEO.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because recently I had this revelation when they were talking about Trump and how they tried to SEO, basically. They tried to take all these 100,000 viewers on the internet. They tried to use the internet to destroy him, and it backfired on them, which often happens on the internet, right?
Well, we should reverse redact Trump.
We really do need to.
Yeah, I finished his book, Art of the Deal, and he's been at a war with the press all along, and he's been trolling them all along, and they've been trolling him all along, like since even in his business days 30 years ago. I mean, they've been kind of at each other's throats, and so he's gotten used to leveraging bad publicity for his own ends for quite a while, and he hasn't always won. But even in that book, he talks about some times where he didn't win, where he had the wrong instinct, but he's learned a lot of lessons from those mistakes. So.
I think there's a lot of what we talk about that we're sort of working towards as we talk about the Christmas Cathedral. I decided we should call it the Christmas
Cathedral. That is brilliant.
The Christmas Cathedral and sort of the entity that is the internet and how it's interplayed with Trump. I think it's beaten both Trump and the media. It's beaten both politics and the media.
Yeah.
And it picked Trump, but
just doesn't always have to stay with him. And I think he's kind of riding the wave. So we should Christmas Cathedral. I like that a lot. I need to start thinking about Christmas already. That's interesting. Okay.
So it came up because I thought that episode we did on church was really good. It was really thought-provoking.
Yeah, and it was I did listen to it again. And I was like, just those feelings, they're still palpable for me. I just still feel that frustration,
Right.
I'm going to church for the first time in months this Sunday. I'm going to go to there's a coworker at work invited me to his church, a nice old black man, and so I may try to play violin for him. I thought it'd be good just to kind of get out of my element and maybe I don't know, just see another side again. We kind of talk about this during Black Panther, just the racial tensions, and I just feel like this might be a good way to kind of try to see another perspective. When I was in India, just being able to spend time with Hindus who I don't agree with fundamentally, religiously or anything, but have a lot of other stuff in common with, and just be able to connect over those things. I thought this would be, a healthy thing for me in this stage of my life where, it's just everything's so politically polarized, and it's like, and me and this guy, like we always have a great talk every time we see each other. It's just like, why are we at odds? Why are we letting the media keep us at odds? Or the politicians or whatever, pundits, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. The hypothetical war between races.
Right. Yeah.
Well, good, man. Yeah. Communication. You've always, cross-culture communication. I think the emphasis there is on the communication.
Right.
Cross-cultural is just the thing that we have, the practical aspect of it.
Yeah.
And let's continue to work on that. Let's continue to build on that. So get out there, man. There is a lot to build.
Make your own myth.
All right.